Left for dead by many, the WAC will rise like a phoenix, reborn as the UAC, resurrected by the puppet master behind the curtain, the ASUN. 5 ASUN schools will combine forces with the WAC 3 to reform the WAC as the all-sports UAC. The ASUN has effectively hijacked the WAC's auto bid to create a second auto bid for all the parties involved. The ASUN had 12 members, with 5 of them playing UAC football. Those 5 schools will now move to the WAC and join up with the remaining 3 schools in the WAC and redress the WAC's charter in UAC clothing. The ASUN office worked in coordination with 15 different schools to create one consortium, one media deal, but 2 auto bids, with the ASUN effectively being the puppet master over the ASUN and the UAC. All 15 schools will benefit in a multitude of ways, starting with operational expenses saved. They will save on administrative overhead, then out-of-conference scheduling across many sports where non-conference home games are hard to come by. Everyone will improve their odds at an auto bid with a second auto bid now available. And finally, everyone will have a higher share of NCAA tournament distributions. And that bigger slice of the pie is demonstrated here. If you combine one men's basketball NCAA tournament unit with one women's basketball NCAA tournament unit, that comes out to be about $2.2 million. Previously, the ASUN schools would have been splitting that at least 12 ways, and if the Texas 3 joined the ASUN, they would have all been splitting it at least 15 ways. But with the hijacking of a second auto bid, the ASUN schools will now split the NCAA tournament unit about 7 ways, maybe 8, 9, or 10 depending on expansion, and the UAC schools will now split it 8 ways, maybe 9 or 10 depending on expansion. In the interim, one NCAA tournament is worth $130,000 more on a per school basis to the schools in the ASUN, and one NCAA tournament unit is worth about $90,000 more on a per school basis to the schools in the UAC. Another benefit to this consortium is the out-of-conference scheduling when home non-conference games are hard to come by. Here is a theoretical scheduling arrangement I've drawn up for men's and women's basketball. The 7 ASUN schools would have 12 league games, while the 8 UAC schools would have 14 conference games. And if you were able to maximize the number of crossover games, that would be a sub 7-hour bus trip, you would come up with this. You have 3 schools up to 20 games. Those are Lipscomb, Eastern Kentucky, and West Georgia. Then you have Bellarmine up to 19 games, and Austin Peay and North Alabama up to 18 games, as well as Queens hitting 16 games. Now, to fill the rest of the blank spots like a jigsaw puzzle, I came up with this. So all the UAC schools would have 20 games in this consortium, and the ASUN schools, the Florida 4 would be up to 18, while Bellarmine, Lipscomb, and Queens would be up to 20. But of course, it's expected that the ASUN and UAC will add a member or two. And when that happens, this theoretical scheduling arrangement will actually be easier to compose. What will be a big benefit to all of these athletic departments is these scheduling crossovers don't only apply to basketball. You can apply this across all the other sports. The 7-school UAC football would rank 5th in 4-year D ratings, which is a computer metric. The MVFC would be first by a wide margin, followed by the Big Sky in second, the Ivy League in third, SoCon in fourth, the CAA would be in sixth, and the Patriot League in seventh. 5 of the 7 UAC schools would be ranked in the top 50: Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, Central Arkansas, Abilene Christian, and Tarleton State. And of the 10 schools in the MVFC, 5 of them are ranked in the top 11, while 8 of them are ranked in the top 20. Switching from football to men's basketball, looking at 5-year KenPom with the future alignments of all conferences, the UAC would rank 22nd, while the ASUN would rank 23rd. Abilene Christian would lead the way at 158th, while Eastern Kentucky would round out the top 200. Tarleton State, UTA, and North Alabama would all finish in the top 250. If we extend the sample size to 10-year KenPom with all the future alignments of conferences, the new UAC would rank 22nd once again, while the remainder of the ASUN would rank 23rd once again. UTA would lead the UAC in 10-year KenPom at 149th, while Abilene Christian would round out the top 200, and then Tarleton State, Eastern Kentucky, and Austin Peay would finish in the top 250. Several of the UAC schools have a very similar enrollment. UTA has a gigantic enrollment at over 41,000. Abilene Christian is a private school, so their enrollment's at about 6,700. But the other 6 UAC schools, Tarleton, Eastern Kentucky, West Georgia, North Alabama, Austin Peay, and Central Arkansas, are all between 18K and 10K. Another common theme is how many of these UAC schools are growing in enrollment. Abilene Christian has a 10-year enrollment growth of 52%. Tarleton State is at 47%, North Alabama 44%, UTA 19%, West Georgia 18%. So 5 of these schools have been absolutely booming over the past decade. Looking over athletic budgets, there's 3 numbers here. The top number at the top above each bar is their overall athletic expenses. The middle number within those small gray bars are how much of their athletic expenses are devoted to athletic student aid. And then the bottom number, which is the number I care about in those colored bars, is how much of their athletic expenses are left over after you isolate that athletic student aid money. And after you isolate that student aid factor, Tarleton would have the highest athletic budget left over, followed by Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, UTA, and Abilene Christian. Moving over to football budgets, Abilene Christian would be at the top, followed by Tarleton State, Eastern Kentucky, and Austin Peay. Of course, North Alabama recently completed their transition, while West Georgia is just at the start of their transition, so their budgets are still developing. And finally, men's basketball budgets, the top 5 are pretty close. You have Abilene Christian at the top, followed by UTA, Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, and Tarleton State. Majority of the UAC schools are in prime areas for student recruitment. Texas is the number 2 state in the country for the percentage of U.S. out-of-state college students that each state exports. Meanwhile, Georgia is number 9. Combined, Texas and Georgia export 1/10 of the country's out-of-state college students. And out-of-state tuition-paying students are important to university presidents because of the looming enrollment cliff. From 2025 to 2029, there will be a 15% decline in the number of 18-year-old college-going students. And if we look into 2022 data of the percentage of first-year high school graduate students from the state of Texas, according to this database, 4% of them at Central Arkansas came from Texas, so Texas is hugely important to UCA. Meanwhile, Austin Peay and North Alabama were below 0.4%, and Eastern Kentucky was below 0.1%. So those 3 schools see a lot of blue ocean in the state of Texas to grow their student base. The UAC footprint is in the absolute sweet spot for football recruitment. I could not find a database for the percentage of FCS players from each state, so instead I'm going to use the database that had the percentage of 3, 4, or 5-star football recruits over a 2-year span as a proxy for that. And Texas was the number 1 state, while Georgia was number 3, Alabama number 5, and Tennessee number 7. So those are 6 UAC schools located in top 7 recruiting states. And if we shift from football to men's basketball and look at the percentage of men's basketball Division I players from each state, Texas was number 2 at 8%, and Georgia was number 4 at nearly 5.5%. Combined, Texas and Georgia contribute 13% of the country's Division I players. Delving into the potential expansion possibilities for the UAC, here's a very surface level outlook, definitely not a deep dive, just a surface level outlook. My assumption is that it's unlikely SoCon schools are poachable. The SoCon was slightly ahead of the UAC in 4-year D ratings in football, and they were quite a bit ahead of the UAC in 10-year KenPom for men's basketball. And on top of that, the SoCon has a $2 million exit fee. Now, I'm not sure what the UAC's war chest is, whether they can pay off a SoCon exit fee, but whatever the case, my assumption is that the UAC would not be able to poach the SoCon. Here I've taken 12 schools, 5 from the Southland, 5 from the OVC. I threw in 1 Division II school, West Florida, and then I included Oral Roberts as a remote long shot. I don't think ORU would leave the summit, but I included them in the possibility that perhaps they wanted to be in Texas. Now, it's unknown which of these schools would accept an invitation to the UAC, so we'd be pretty much throwing darts trying to guess who would make that move. The UAC would be an upgrade over the Southland, but the Southland schools who just paid WAC exit fees, like Lamar or Stephen F. Austin, might not have the appetite to make that switch again. In the bottom left, we have athletic expenses For schools with updated numbers in the Knight Commission, I use the Knight Commission for them. If the Knight Commission was not updated, then I use the Department of Education. And after you isolate student aid money, the highest athletic expenses left over would be Stephen F. Austin, followed by Lamar. In the bottom middle, I have football budgets. Knight Commission was the source if their numbers were updated. If not, then I use Department of Education. And Tennessee State would have the highest football budget, although I don't know how much of that football budget is for rent at the Titan Stadium. After that, the highest football budgets would be UIW, though that could be bloated a bit due to the higher scholarship money, followed by Stephen F. Austin and then Lamar. In the bottom right are men's basketball budgets. At the top, you have Little Rock, Stephen F. Austin, and Oral Roberts in a virtual tie. And then the only other school above $2 million would be McNeese. In the top left, you have enrollments. Lamar would have the highest enrollment at 17,000, followed by West Florida at 14K, then East Texas A&M at 13K, and Tennessee Tech and Stephen F. Austin at 10K. If we look at their 4-year D rating in football, UIW would be in 8th, UT Martin 21st, SEMO 32nd, Stephen F. Austin would be 44th. McNeese is 102nd, but historically they're a lot better. Moving down to 10-year KenPom in men's basketball, Stephen F. Austin, who's been good for a long time, would lead the way at 150th, followed by Oral Roberts, who would also be in the top 200. They went to the Sweet 16 recently, have a large fan base in basketball. Then Little Rock would be at 231st, and everyone else would be in the bottom quarter of D1 basketball. Although McNeese just had 2 great years where they went to the NCAA tournament. And then moving down to fan support in football and men's basketball, McNeese definitely has the best fan support. Stephen F. Austin has decent fan support in both sports as well. My guess is the UAC will target McNeese and Stephen F. Austin. And if McNeese and Stephen F. Austin turn them down, I think they will pick up one OVC school and stop at 9. But if Stephen F. Austin and McNeese, if they approach them and they get turned down, expansion might not even be necessary for the UAC. 8 is still enough, and it's a bigger slice of the pie for everyone.